And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. This outlook is for Thursday into Friday, and to preface things, we are watching some impulses of low pressure lifting out of the North Pacific. One of these will be located south of Kodiak Island and southeast of the Alaska Peninsula, and there's a couple other waves of energy pinwheeling around that. There'll be yet another low come up as we go through Thursday night into Friday, and again during the early weekend. To start out, though, for Thursday morning, we'll find areas of IFR continuing along the central Brooks Range and North Slopes. Areas of the eastern interior, around and above the 40-mile Gold Country, upper Yukon Valley, and then also back here through and south of the Alaska Range down into the northern Copper River Basin, a broad band of IFR conditions along the outer Panhandle and into the northern Gulf Coast, as well as along areas of Bristol and Kuskokwim Bays. By Thursday afternoon, we still have some pockets of IFR up there in the central North Slope, in the north side of the Brooks Range. Areas around the central Alaska Range down into the northern Copper River Basin, around the Talkeetna Mountains eastward. And then a broad area of the Panhandle across the Gulf, Kodiak Island, back through the southeast Bering, up through St. Paul and St. Matthew. Looking ahead to Friday morning, we have IFR conditions still holding in areas of the north along the North Slope and Utqiagvik down toward Wainwright. And then also here, still some pockets of IFR south of the Alaska Range and south central, down along the Gulf Coast, much of the Panhandle under IFR conditions, because again, these impulses of low pressure with enhanced moisture coming northward and then producing rain in the low elevations, especially at sea level, but then snows as you get up into the mid and upper levels of the mountains. And back here through the west, we find IFR conditions from Lower Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait across the Alaska Peninsula, and then tailing back out to the far western Aleutians. And for Friday afternoon, we find IFR conditions expected along areas of the west side of Cook Inlet, eastern Kenai Peninsula, back on out toward the central portion of the Bering Sea. So looking ahead here for Thursday, IFR conditions will be up there along the North Slope and the spine of the Brooks Range. Look at Anatuvik Pass, IFR early becoming MVFR, but as you fly north, especially there toward the North Slope, IFR conditions will hold. Same thing, Adigan Pass, IFR conditions becoming MVFR through the pass, especially the south entrance, but north entrance and on up toward the North Slope, looking at IFR conditions. Lake Clark and Merrill have enough moisture, lower ceilings, and some cloud cover there to keep IFR conditions early in the day. Thursday giving way to VFR. Rainy Pass also IFR early Thursday giving way to VFR conditions. Windy Pass will see MVFR conditions become IFR with more in the way of IFR conditions there east of the pass. Isabel Pass is expected to generally stay in IFR conditions on Thursday. Dropping down through or heading east toward Mentasta Pass, MVFR conditions are largely expected there on Thursday. Tanita Pass could see MVFR conditions become IFR as we go through midday in the afternoon. Portage Pass starting out with IFR conditions, especially mid-pass down through the east entrance, IFR early, giving way to VFR conditions as we go through the afternoon and early evening. Chilkoot and White, we'll see things deteriorate on Thursday, MVFR conditions becoming IFR. So we have an area of low pressure Thursday out through this region, and ahead of it, the southeast southerly flow, allowing for freezing levels aloft to bump upwards of 2, 4, even 6,000 feet there south of Haida Gwaii. Otherwise, the rest of the mainland, we have the surface freezing line in the morning running along the inner channels of the Panhandle back out here toward Prince William Sound along the Kenai coast, running down across the Alaska Peninsula back out toward the central Bering. And the greatest threat for icing on Thursday will be along areas of the Gulf Coast where we have some thicker clouds and precipitation producing clouds generally above 6,000 feet. There could be some considerable moderate icing across this region of the Gulf into the Panhandle. Back further west, we find an area of moderate icing possible in the Alaska Peninsula there off of Sand Point, and then another area further back to the north and west from around and south of St. Lawrence Island and then back out here toward the central and western portion of the Bering Sea above 4,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds 30,000 feet. There is a jet core well south of the area. 125 knot jet max is located off toward the west-southwest of Haida Gwaii and Vancouver Island. Otherwise, upper level winds fairly light across much of the state of Alaska. And at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we do find southwest flow coming in to Haida Gwaii, British Columbia coast, the Panhandle on the order of 40 to locally as high as 55, 60 knots. And then back up here along the Arctic coast, Chukchi Sea coastline, Utqiagvik toward Point Hope, winds out of the east 35 knots. And more so here along eastern Russia, winds generally 30 to 40 knots with an easterly component. Down at 3,000 feet, so we have the one low circulation in this vicinity and some stronger winds. So at 3,000 feet, we have winds running 40 to 50 knots along the northern Gulf Coast, locally as high as 55 knots there outside the entrance of Cook Inlet. And then southern portion of the Gulf, winds southwest there, 50 knots. Strongest winds are up here across the Chukchi Sea coming in off the Lisburn Peninsula, upwards of 60 knots and as high as 70 knots here over the Gulf of Anadyr in eastern Russia. And so turbulence, the greatest threat of turbulence on Thursday along areas of the Gulf Coast, pretty widespread moderate turbulence potential from the Panhandle back across to Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai, dropping down to Kodiak Island and across the Alaska Peninsula, but some concentrated winds here could result in isolated severe turbulence just outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, as well as just outside of Cook Inlet between Kodiak Island and the southern part of the Kenai Peninsula. And turbulence there could be running on the order of surface to 5,000 or 6,000 feet. In the far north, stronger winds too up through this region, especially coming off the western Brooks Range across the Lisburn Peninsula, including Cape Lisburn and Point Hope. We expect moderate turbulence there, and on the south side of the Brooks Range, surface to 4,000 feet, and then trailing out here in through the Bering Strait from around, say, Wales and Steller down to especially Gamble on St. Lawrence Island. We could see moderate turbulence surface to 3,000 feet on Thursday.